It really took us off guard this year, considering that it's almost June and we have yet to step foot onto a racetrack, especially given how open things were last summer in Ontario. To pass the time and keep our minds sharp, a lot of us have taken to sim racing. And while it's been great to see that community grow and become more viable for racing series, it's still no replacement for the real thing. You know, your body just craves being able to experience those G-forces and just get a feel for driving by the seat of your pants. The first race that was supposed to be on the calendar toward the end of May was Motorsport GP, and I think we had, as a team, this romantic notion that, you know, it'd be kind of a redemption for us. Motorsport GP was the only track that we've never finished an endurance race at, given the crash that we had in the FIT. But in hindsight, it probably is the best situation for us not to campaign a brand new car that's unproven at such a fast racetrack that really there's less room for error than we might find at some of the other tracks on the calendar. So the first race this year is going to be at Calabogie. It's funny because every year we tell ourselves, oh, next season we're going to be so much better prepared. We got to start earlier, get all the heavy lifting done in the wintertime. And yet it still feels like no matter how much you plan ahead, you always feel like you're a week or two short of being comfortable.
We'll tie that up, both sides. I had to tee off for this. So I'm actually sitting in the middle of his meters, yeah. I had to tee off for the GoPro hub.
This year, running a car that had already been built for racing, we thought we had a bit of a head start, but turns out there were many things that we needed to replace, repair, and find out whether it's fit for 8 hours of racing. Is it working? And we bought that thing just a couple months ago. Pro tip to all you guys thinking about buying a existing race car: if it comes with spares, chances are those parts need to go on the car immediately.
Well, it makes me think that someone actually bothered, so it saves. Yeah, mine.
Dude, someone said that's a value.
I distinctly remember the week leading up to the Calabogie race. We put in a lot of late nights, and it basically felt like we were working 2 full-time jobs, spending our evenings at Driven. And shout out to the guys at Driven for giving us the space and the support in trying to get this car ready as best as we could. While we really wanted to film as much as we could during this weekend, COVID protocols were in effect, limiting the size of the crew for each of the teams, which meant everybody that was there representing Team Partout had to get their hands dirty. And so it became a matter of film or literally fill up the car with gas, hold the extinguisher, getting the drivers ready for the next stint. So unfortunately, we're going to mostly have to deal with in-car footage for this time around. We always forget to pull the tire.
Did you pull it?
I just pulled it when I got into the pits.
One more. Good, good.
I remember heading out for qualifying on the Saturday, having done a few laps around the track, just feeling this new excitement because the car was really hooked up and it was really fast. And I remember thinking, wow, the guys are really gonna enjoy this car. Can't wait for everyone to have their shot and just to take it around Calabogie, which is a beautiful track. The race gets started with Chris taking the first stint, and immediately we have electrical issues, check engine light. Chris goes out for his first lap or two, comes immediately back in, and we are off to the races and diagnosing. Because of the ECU trouble we had previously, we thought it might have been that, so we hot swapped our ECU. The first lap back out with a swapped ECU, Chris experiences the check engine light again, he comes back in, and this happened maybe 3 or 4 times before we realized what the issue was, and getting a proper sensor reading on the check engine light, that the crank position sensor was faulty. And what we deduced was that it was just completely caked in oil, and it was creating bad readings or just killing the sensor altogether. After cleaning out the sensor, putting it back in, we are back into the race. Fast forward about 3 hours, 4 hours into the race. We are close to the halfway point. It's my stint to drive, and I distinctly remember getting back into the car and feeling like, wow, this is not the same car that we had this morning. The car was darting all over the place, over bumps. It would steer itself essentially, and I remember one quite scary point where at the end of the front straight it would hit a bump and the car would want to steer itself closer and closer to the wall. And I think at that point we were running the short configuration of the track, given some oil on the full track. Lining up for the turn on turn 1 meant that you were right up against the wall, and having that active steering issue meant that while we were on the line next to the wall, the car wanted to steer even closer to the wall by itself suddenly and unexpectedly. Needless to say, after feeling this for a couple of laps in a row, I just lost confidence in the car and decided and radioed in to the guys saying, hey, I need to come in, there's something wrong with the car. Chris, being the hot shoe that he is, decided to see if he can cobble together a few laps in the current state of the vehicle. But after a lap or two, decided to also come back in, verifying that he was experiencing the same problems. Turns out that the front left wheel bearing had gone, and the car was experiencing maybe plus or minus 5 degrees of movement by itself, which perfectly explained the issues that we were experiencing, that any undulation was going to cause that the car to tow by itself into any direction, left or right. With this issue now apparent, we decided to retire the car halfway through Saturday. The guys worked pretty hard through the rest of Saturday to get the car ready for Sunday. Having the suspension in the front fixed up, we thought we were in the clear. However, come Sunday morning, as we are rotating our tires and checking pressures, we realized that we had the exact same problem, but only worse, in the rear left suspension. What ended up happening was Sergio and Ije drove all the way to Ottawa to a parts store to pick one up. And within, call it 60 minutes from finding the problem, we were well back on our way, having a car with finally a sorted suspension that's not gonna steer by itself. The rest of Sunday actually went super smooth for us. Everyone had a chance to get back out in the car and redevelop some confidence with it. And Chris actually put up a top 5 time for the entire weekend with a 226 in the full configuration. All in all, it wasn't quite the result we were looking for the weekend, but at the same time, reflecting on it, just happy to have a fully functional car that's ready for the next weekend. And we certainly learned more of the quirks of this chassis. Some of the things that we learned that I think will point to some adjustments that we'll need to make for the rest of the season are the steering in the RSX leaves a little bit to be desired. This front suspension in this DC5 chassis, let's just say we're really spoiled driving our personal FRS and BRZs that are quite a league difference in performance and in capability on the front end. The other thing that was quite alarming to learn was that for every stent in checking the oil levels, we realized that we needed to top up about a liter every time. So this could be that, you know, the car's been sitting for a while and the seals are on its way out, or there's some other issue that's causing it to burn oil, but we'll have to do some further diagnosing to find out. Now all eyes are on our next race at Shannonville, which is a very bumpy track, and given our experience with the wheel bearings at Calabogie, fingers crossed.